evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is bonus night tonight on the Family Party live stream. Not one guest, but two. The guests are like buses on this. We had a few weeks with no guests, and then two come along at the same time. So welcome, Gareth and Phil. Familiar faces to all. And we've got Phil's just making some delicate adjustments, technical adjustments there, I think. We've got so much to talk about this week. Mountains and mountains of material. We're never going to get through it all. Because we'll end up chatting about it, and we'll end up talking about your comments as well. So do fire comments in. So what have you been up to today? Anything exciting? Have you just been working, or is working exciting? What have you been doing today, Gareth?
So today my excitement was I went to the Investment Association's conference that they had, 2025 conference. And the exciting for me was having at least two different sessions, but one was from Kate Forbes and the other one was from Anna Sarah. So that was interesting to see. That was exciting. So we got to as well as the Times editor, who was absolutely hilarious. So it was very good, very good.
So Kate Forbes and Anna Sarah, just from the point of view of presentation, not to do with what they said, but were you impressed? Do you think they presented their material well?
I felt Kate Forbes was very consistent with the S&P way of saying something. So I think she nailed it in terms of as I would expect. Anna Sarah, I felt less clear on maybe, he said what he needed to say was more the feeling I got. I think in a way I was more impressed with what, like the delivery Kate gave. Where it wasn't as structured. I felt Anna Sarah's wasn't as structured in terms of the delivery and in terms of what was being said, and the like for example, he said, "I got one promise to make, but no promise was made."
Okay, save it for next time.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Keep you in suspense, yeah.
Exactly. I was like, you said you got one promise to make, and you said, if this, but that. And I was like, what was the promise?
I'll drop him an email. You just talking about this before we started. So you asked them about how they're going to cope with population decline in the years to come, how they're going to deal with that in the economy. And the answer was, well.
No, the question wasn't even asked. I raised the question and it never even got featured. And so the question was, with a steady decline of the, the lowest fertility rate, how does the current government, or what should the current or next government do to address it? And that never got featured, even though people saw it and up-liked it, but they did, I think the questions
did it get up-liked pretty high, or like was it deliberate?
It was the highest up-liked of all the other questions. So
of all the ones that didn't get answered, but they answered everyone before it. You saying?
No, they answered none of the questions on there for the political talks. Not a single one of them got. It was just a pre-programmed answer, question time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How about you, Phil? What have you been up to today?
Just sort of work things, quite non-exciting and technical. So I've walked the dog. I've done other things like that, eaten breakfast, but and having a bit of a debate with somebody about something not related to family party, but yeah.
Well, I think that's a win for Gareth for the exciting day then. So,
I was like, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
My day, I went for a run first thing this morning. Then I've been sitting at my desk all day doing all sorts of things. So family party members, you'll see a few emails coming out over the next few days. I wrote all those today and did various things. But right, let's get on to our topics for this evening. Let's just start with this one. I've got quite a few videos here. This is from America, I think. So what do you think of this? So obviously a video advert. Okay, you got the message
IVF
there?
Done right. Yeah.
IQ is 50% genetic.
Yeah.
Height is 80% genetic. So have your best baby.
Tall,
IVF done right.
Smart baby.
I mean, they're not even remotely trying to hide that. No. That's an advert made by someone who assumes that there's no one in the world that's got any sort of problem with eugenics.
Yeah.
They haven't got the slightest reservation of, oh, we'd better just, wrap this up and make it sound a bit different. Just absolutely straightforward, straight down the line, eugenics service, which we've got in the hospital in Glasgow. It's basically the same thing, but they don't advertise it quite that blatantly. Quite shocking. A bit. That's an understatement. That's yeah, very much so.
Are there not significant dangers to that?
There can be. You do run into problems if you push these things too far. I mean, like biological problems. I would imagine that they know what they're doing scientifically with that sort of thing. That they'd be making appropriate selections. They'd be aware of some dangers with it. I think in the longer term, then if people keep doing it, then eventually you run into problems with that regard. But the moral side is very serious. Anyway, let's go to our picture. This is interesting. Remember the smacking ban in Scotland? When the family party started, the smacking ban was going through the Parliament. And I was invited on a couple of TV programs and the radios back in the days before they realized how bad we were to talk about the smacking ban.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's like lots of things. Now we've got a Labour government. They're doing exactly the things that the SNP were doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Same sort of ideology. So a smacking ban's been mooted now in the UK Parliament. So this is from the Christian Institute starting pulling out the evidence showing that smacking doesn't harm kids. I would say that though. I mean, how many years on are we from the smacking ban in Scotland? We're probably about 8 years on, something like that, or 7 years on. I would just say, how's it going? How is the behaviour of children going? Are children happier and better behaved? Because these kids will be at school now. I think it'd be hard pressed to find a primary school teacher who said, "Oh yes, we've definitely noticed an improvement since that smacking ban came in." I don't think so. I mean, the ban came in. I think the social pressure was building up against smacking for a long time before then. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not working out well, and the balance has shifted. The balance of power shifted far too far in favour of children, and it's creating all sorts of problems.
Yeah. I can say that I certainly am aware of, I would say, because it's not necessarily just a school thing, it's across the board. There are, and obviously some areas are worse than others, but I've seen some definite situations where I'm like, there is no regard for consequence of actions at all. Just complete disregard of consequences of actions. So we've had to engineer consequences in our family, but I can see some kids have no consequence. There's just this. There's no connection to this will have negative outcomes. I can disrupt the classes as long as I want, and it won't make a difference.
You get treated as
I find with discipline, it's very hard to come up with things that have, an immediate time frame. In the same way that discipline would have had with a smack or something like that, and it's very hard with a child to try and get them to think long term about something, and so that lack of immediacy, it's very difficult, I think, to deal with.
Yeah.
But this went through the Parliament, totally one-sided. It was going to pass by a mile. Then the Conservatives opposed it in their usual, most feeble way they possibly could, by saying things like, "Or what if a child's about to run into the road or something? And it's the only way to stop." I mean, this sort of nonsense. Instead of actually getting to grips with the core of the issue, they just try and deal with the most extreme cases they could come up with. So there wasn't really opposition to it, proper opposition in the Parliament. The Conservatives voted against it, but they didn't really oppose it in principle as it went through. And I think we're living with the consequences of it. Right, this is an interesting one. Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service. So this is the government body that decides which cases, criminal cases, go to court and which ones don't. So of all the government bodies, maybe the most important, they seem to be totally neutral. I've still got a complaint in with them for the fact that they were at the Edinburgh Pride with a stall bedecked with rainbow flags. And I said, you're showing bias there. You can't do that. I mean, this was Pride. I mean, when was that? June. I still haven't got a reply out of them. They reckon the first email went into their spam folder. I mean, really? Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service haven't got a system of making sure emails get through to them. Yeah, so still on the case for that. And now they've come up with this. So they say they support today's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It launches a global campaign, 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain Casey recently pledged her commitment to victims. So International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women 2025. I would like to make clear that I understand sexual abuse inflicted upon women and children to be the single greatest challenge our justice system faces. The blame for this lies with those responsible for the perpetration of such brutality. It is unacceptable, and victims should feel able to speak out without further fear. Okay, so who is most likely to be the victim of violent crime, a man or a woman? Take a wild guess based on this.
Based on that as woman.
A man, yeah. Murders are about between 2/3 and 3/4 male every year in Scotland. So far more men are victims of violent crime and are murdered in Scotland.
Well, yeah, but not according to that statement.
Well, they're not. She says that's the top priority.
Exactly.
And so when cases come before the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, if it's a man who's been attacked and a woman being attacked, and the courts are quite busy, the evidence is a bit, bit borderline, but which one are they going to go for? I mean, it's like they're openly stating their bias, that their priority is violence against women. I mean, how can they not see that you can't do that in that position? You just can't say things like that. Your job is to be absolutely impartial and to deal with things on a case-by-case basis, but it's so politicized. Dorothy Bain, her links with the government, I think, are very, very close, far closer than they ought to be. So she just parrots the government's lines, and it's totally out of order there. Now, I've got my slides slightly out of order here, so I'm just going to nip on to 23, I think it is. All right, 22 will do. This is the headline in the Sunday Post: National Emergency, 39 women killed by men in 5 violent years. So they're saying in the course of the current Scottish Parliament, 39 women have been killed by men. Okay, obviously the number of men who've been murdered will be far higher. Okay, just out of interest, take a guess. What proportion of murders do you think are committed by men?
Proportion?
What percentage of murders committed by men?
I would have assumed it was high. I would have assumed it was like 90% or something like that.
Yeah, spot on, 90%. Yes, 90%. So 90% of murders committed by men. About 70% of victims are male. Okay, so 10% of murders are female, and about 30-35%, whatever, of victims are female as well.
But I guess the point that they're making here is that because there's an imbalance, because proportionally very few of the murderers are women. So they're basically saying, there's an imbalance here, that only 10% of the murderers are women, but a third of the murdered are women.
But that's the focus on this, though, is about the victims, not so much about the perpetrators. Basically, it's feminism in action.
Yeah,
it's looking at every issue through the lens of how can we find something.
The lens is basically men are bad.
Yeah,
men are bad, and they're murdering lots of men. That's okay because they're murdering bad men, but they are murdering some women, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, and occasionally women murder women, and women murder men sometimes as well. I mean, all these things happen. But it reminds me of Transgender Day of Remembrance. How many transgender people have been murdered in Scotland in the last 5 years? Somewhere in the region of 0. They're having a vigil, creating this impression that this is a really big issue. Now, obviously, murder is very, very serious. Obviously, I mean, I would say, more angry when a man murders a woman. Yeah, maybe I am actually. Maybe that is even worse, because that's a total contradiction
of power, those things.
Yeah, of what a man's responsibility should be. But the impression created by this is false. I'm saying this is the national emergency, and you've got the Lord Advocate saying that the top priority is to deal with these cases. It's just all out of sync. So, at the Parliament, the Women's Right Network, which is actually like a gender critical group, basically, they're having a vigil at the Parliament on Thursday to remember the female victims of male violence. So I guess female victims of female violence, they can't be represented there. So now, I think this is...
So what are the stats for female victims of female violence?
I couldn't find it. I couldn't actually find the matchup. I could find the proportion of murderers and the proportion of victims, but I couldn't match up which ones were which.
So here's if they are crying out because of the injustice, so that a man is bigger and stronger and more able, I wonder what the attempted murder rate of women, in other words, a woman failing to actually kill a man, in other words, but not only because she tried and wasn't successful. If you included that, the proportions would probably be higher, if not 50%. That would be my view. But the other, if they're really crying out, if the argument is that's totally unjust, what about the 19,000 unjust murders of abortions? You know what I mean? Like there's an injustice that is a top priority. Like that, all murder is bad.
Yeah,
and particularly that injustice committed by. So is it only the male doctors who are committing the crime there in that situation? That is
not with pills by post, because that's entirely self-administered. So
yes, well then therefore it's done by women and doesn't count. I understand now.
Yeah, I think with abuse, what you're saying about men generally being stronger, I can't remember the details of this, but I understand that actually women hitting men is equally, if I remember rightly, if not more common than men hitting women. It's just that men basically are better or worse at it, however you want to put it, that they're stronger. So it tends to
it has more of an effect.
I think temperamentally, men are more violent. Men in general are more varied than women. So any extremes of virtually anything you can measure, there are going to be more men. So when it comes to being aggressive, then there are going to be more men out on that wing. So I was thinking about it from a vigil point of view. I say, there will be people at this vigil who are genuinely remembering people they know who've been murdered. That wasn't the case at the Transgender Day of Remembrance, but it will be the case at this vigil at the Parliament in 2 days' time. So you've got a combination of genuine remembrance, but the group that's organised it it's not some sort of counselling group or pastoral care organisation. It's a feminist campaigning group. So the reason they're holding the vigil is to advance a particular agenda, which makes it quite a tricky.
That's okay. Like we do a vigil for the unborn, and that are killed. We do that as partly campaigning, and to remember the lives that have been taken. So.
The difference though is for us it's just totally straightforward. There's no selectivity in it, if you like. We're not trying to portray something that's not the whole picture.
Yeah,
we're showing just the full magnitude of what's going on. It's just been an interesting contrast. Because say this trans one was last Thursday, this one's this Thursday, and we're thinking at the moment of doing one of our 19,000 light vigils somewhere soon. So watch this space for details. So it feels like a little series of them coming up. So interesting. Right, let's go back to the I've got to here. Right, so Slovenia's had a referendum on euthanasia and voted no. So well done them. Do you see this one? Prince Albert of Monaco has refused to allow abortion liberalization. from what I understand, the Parliament is for it, but he just said no. I'm not having that. I'm not signing that. So that's well done him.
He vetoed that.
Yeah.
So Charles has the same right here. He could do the same.
In theory, but it would cause a constitutional crisis. The King of, you've probably heard this before, the King of Belgium did it in, was it 1990? Refused to sign an abortion law. So he abdicated for a day, and Belgium became a republic for a day. Then the Parliament passed the law. Then they made him king again the day after.
You are kidding.
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember his name. I think he's in the process of being made a saint in the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a story. Now, this is something we knew was coming. Remember, you were both there, weren't you, at the Sandyford Clinic a couple of years ago when we metaphorically bricked it up with cardboard boxes. I mean, reading the media, you'd think we'd planted a bomb under it. But one of the big placards we had said, "Stop experimenting on children," meaning stop giving puberty blockers that you don't actually know what they do. This is like experimenting.
11 on this.
Sorry?
I was just reading it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what's happening now is it is literally going to be an experiment. Because the Cass review, which, as I've said all the way through, people got much too excited about. People claimed, oh, this is it. This is all that transgender nonsense knocked on the head. No, it's not. Not at all. Because she still accepted the idea there's such a thing as transgender people. And with puberty blockers, she said, we need to stop using them unless it's part of an experiment. So they're now recruiting children for this experiment. And what basis have they got for trying to use these drugs? Just the ideology of transgenderism. So it is literally going to be experimented on children now. Children who haven't got any medical condition. They've just got if you like, a false belief that's been induced in them by something in our culture. So it's very concerning, and it will include Scotland. So people have claimed victory much too soon. Same with the Supreme Court judgment. That was not a massive victory either. So we're not out of the woods by a long way with trans things. So people have been saying about this. I mean, how do you explain to children about this trial and the possible consequences of these drugs on them for the rest of their lives? I mean, how can you begin to do that and claim you've got consent to take part in an experiment like that?
This feels like a legal nightmare because you know, in 18 years' time, the child could, the 11-year-old could come back and say, do you know what, this was a complete, and then let's say it's a failure, right? So let's say the experience is a failure, and would there be lawsuits claimed? Like it feels like a legal nightmare. This is a terrible idea.
Well, I assume they'll have to sign away their rights to any compensation. But if they end up, say, sterile, so you made the decision when you're 11 to take drugs that made you sterile, and then 20 years later you're saying, what on earth did you do to me?
Yes.
I mean, quite rightly, it's crazy. So it's still being driven to its utter disgrace. The medical profession in this area is still being driven by transgender ideology. That they're still taking it that there's such a thing as being transgender, that there's such, changing gender is a normal, natural, and healthy thing to do. So it's, very concerning. I mean, let's see what would the results be based on? The results would be based on basically, hey kids, how do you feel? Do you feel this worked out well for you or not? That will be a major thing in this, and all the adults around them largely will be cheering them on all the way. And a lot of the kids will be turned into little activists, and they'll say, "Yeah, it was great," and then we might be back to square one.
The real sad thing is it often ends up in somebody maybe taking their lives, unhappy with the choices of life and everything, and then who's left to claim? I mean, that is just terrible. Yeah.
Why would the parents allow their kids to take part? Good question. I think sometimes parents are like bullied into the mold. They're told, do you want a live daughter or do you want a dead son? That's the sort of line the parents have been fed.
And under
the
conversion
parents
therapy, it would be an offence to resist,
Yeah. I mean, that's the sad thing, to see how many parents are persuaded, forced, coerced, or whatever, into going along with this with their children. So watch this space. Right, let's move on. Oh, the Greens. Right. Right. So the Greens are saying football ticket prices need to be capped. But the Greens, they never, like, the obvious consequences of something, they think they can just ignore them. It's as if they're constantly gambling on the lack of insight, shall we say, of their audience. So if you only allow football teams to charge, I don't know, £25 per ticket, the teams have got far less money. So their teams are going to decline in quality. And, well,
players will move somewhere else.
And how are you going to choose who gets in? Are you going to have a lottery? Or what? How's it going to work? It's just populism at its most crude. But as if that wasn't enough. So they're now talking about how much time people need off work to watch Scotland in the World Cup. So Gillian Mackay noted, she's replying to someone, if the standard working day is 9 till 5, you'd want time off to get home, to the pub, and meet friends before kickoff. This got you voting Green yet? I mean, that's just what you want, isn't it? I mean, if you've got no clue how the economy works, you just can't. In fact, you really can't think much beyond going to the pub and watching the football. Then they're going to be the party for you. But hopefully, there's not too many people like that. Right? If the game is later in the day, then it should certainly fall on the following day. So if the game is in the evening, you get the next morning off, say, because you'll have a hangover.
Wow. Wow. I love how this is totally not a green issue.
Yeah. I mean, my main objection is, why is this for football? I watch the Grand Prix. They don't give me any time off. Well, it's on a Sunday normally. Yeah. Phil, are you impressed with their economic policies here?
Not particularly, no.
And the scary thing is that they think this is going to work. Well, will it? Will this work? Is this gaining popularity for the Greens?
Is this a desperate attempt to try and win favor for the atrocious, like, just chaotic, is this reputational damage correction or not?
I think it's just they genuinely think it's going to work.
Well, they're riding high in the polls, aren't they? So
I'm not. Are they in Scotland? I think they've been going up a little bit.
Yeah.
In England, they are. Talking of which, let's go to England and hear them. So this is Zach Polanski in England. So again, talking about the Greens, who, when it comes to the crunch of actually facing up to the reality of the consequences of their policies, they just ignore it, just pretend it's not there. And I love that Zach Polanski, that's a made-up name. So he picks a name ending with ski, which sounds a bit Russian to me. So I wonder why he picked a Russian-sounding name. Anyway, right. Let's watch this.
Right earlier when she's talking about borrowing to invest, that's one way. Mm-hmm. But also there's something called spending multipliers, which is where you invest in the economy, say the National Health Service. You get that money back because you have a well population. Now, of course, it's important that people are healthy just to be healthy. But actually, if you cut through austerity, that's a completely false economy. You have people missing work, you have more long-term health conditions, and you break the economy in the way that we've seen both Conservative governments do it and Labour government now too.
But you say there you can borrow. The government's already borrowing enormous amounts, and there is an already massive amount of national debt, and it's way more than the government spends every year, and it costs a fortune to pay the interest on that debt. So would you not put any limits on government borrowing?
Well, the first thing to say is debt to GDP ratio is at 100%. In Japan, it's 270%, and they have much better living standards than we do.
But in terms of this country, it's at the highest level it's been for a very, very long time. The financial markets are very sensitive to the decisions that the Chancellor makes. That's the case whether you'd like it or not. The UK's already got huge levels of debt. So are you suggesting that actually you'd be relaxed about the government borrowing much, much more?
Well, I think Andy Burnham was really interesting recently when he said we need to stop being in hock to the bond markets. And I think
there was a market reaction.
Well, exactly. So what I think we need to do is get back to a place where actually democratic politicians who are elected by the people are more worried about the cleaners, the teachers, the nurses, the people on the ground who are actually creating the economy with their hands, rather than the people who hold these assets, who are making money while they sleep without actually working. That's deeply problematic. Now, are the markets important? Of course, they play a role, but much more important is the trust of the public on the politicians that they democratically elect. And we've gone so far the other way.
I just feel like he's gambling on the fact that people don't understand.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
That's totally opposite, the exact opposite of what I've heard today and what's been, in terms of that's completely doesn't make any sense financially at all.
So they're like the downside, you can just ignore it and just pretend it's not there. Okay.
I was thinking of it like a summary of the whole rights movement of basically being something for nothing. That's what you're saying. You have the right to this without any responsibility. That you are entitled to something without any means of earning it, paying for it, or any of those things. And that's behind all the rights kind of stuff. And the problem is that it's all expenditure, but there's no source. There's no place that comes from.
Yeah.
And also, you're only as good as the only reason why Japan can probably get to 200% is because the lenders are willing to lend it because they know they can probably pay it back. You know what I mean? They're punching way above their weight. It's like, if you've got a real big earning power, you can lend a lot of money. You can buy $1 million house or 10 million, whatever it is, because they know that you're making that much money back. So the ratios are higher.
Yeah.
But that is, what about the policy that is like, with you're saying the teachers, which are now nurses, which are fewer and fewer, teachers, which are fewer and fewer, the fertility issue. You're gonna have to import those things now. I think it doesn't add up.
No, I think it's national debt's one of those things. If you go through an era until there's no one alive who can remember things going horribly wrong, really, in this sort of area, then people just assume it's going to be okay. But then it all goes horribly wrong, and then you've got maybe 60 years of people remembering it, and you're okay. I think we're in a phase, economy-wise, where there's so many people who just assume, well, this is what happens. You invest your money in stocks and shares, and it just goes up by about 7%. It always has. That's what happened my whole life. So it's just going to keep happening. Everything's going to be fine. The government keeps borrowing more and more. Every point people say, oh, you can't do it. It always turns out okay. And then eventually it doesn't. And people learn the hard way. Anyways, that's just a few words of wisdom from the Greens. I'll just mention this very quickly. I don't know if Phil and Gareth, I don't know if you saw this on social media. Neil Mackay in the Herald said he thought Jesus would be on the beach offering people, illegal immigrants arriving in small boats, tea and towels. So I replied to it saying, well, maybe he'd offer them a cup of tea and a towel, but he'd also be able to know what they were thinking, to look into their heart, if you like, to know why they'd come. And if it was because they just wanted to make more money and get their family over so their family could be wealthier and they knew full well they were breaking the law, then maybe Jesus would have some challenging words to say about that, and obviously offer of forgiveness and restoration as well. But part of the reason I put this up is just yet another example of everyone wanting to talk Christian at the moment. It's as though it's becoming the trump card in any debate. It's not so much you have to argue that you're right. If you can argue that you're the real Christians in the situation, it seems to be increasingly that's what's happening. It's fascinating. I'm all the better of it for me, because I think that often starts exactly the sort of conversation that we're interested in having.
Do you think that it's related to what they're seeing in America, where it seems the Christians have quite a strong play in with the likes of Trump, for example, and and rightly and wrongly in terms of do you think it's trying to win that percentage of votage the voters here in the UK? Do you think this is just a ploy, or do you think it's?
I think it's just the fact that there's been a rise of sort of right-wing Christianity, if you like. That Tommy Robinson, things like that. Then Reform like to talk Christian. The other small right-wing parties like to talk Christian as well. I think it is coming from America, some of it. But it's interesting to see that everyone else wants to respond with it. So I don't know if you saw this BBC report. Tommy Robinson supporters are turning to Christianity, leaving the church in a dilemma. The dilemma, obviously, this is the BBC report.
I think the article's okay. Like it seems to be, reporting that there's this genuine sort of kind of circumstance where people who are perhaps culturally Christian are turning up into churches where the churches have abandoned, the true faith, and have embraced, left-wing ideology. And for me, it's a bit sad in some ways because to a certain extent, both are missing the point. And for me, it takes the genuine faith, not just the Christian, like on the right. I'm hearing many people that are saying something about Christianity at the same time as swearing, same time as speaking full of expletives, saying they're Christian, and then talking about the things that they've done, not in terms of the things that they've done and repented of, but just what they're up to. And you think, well, that is a very misrepresentative of what it is to be a Christian. And then on the other side, you've got the left, which are embracing LGBT, embracing, everything the Bible says you shouldn't do, and then sort of proclaiming this to be Christianity, joining with every other faith, saying that Christianity can, that you have other gods as well as God and those kind of things, and abandoning, I think core tenets of the Christian faith. What frustrates me is that the real thing is good and is worthy and worthwhile. And so I think those that genuinely, believe in Jesus, his teaching, his life, his death, his resurrection, need to stand up and say what they believe.
Yeah, I thought the interesting thing with the BBC headline. Does it leave the church with a dilemma? I guess that's the case with any church. When new people come along who are not Christians, and that's just should be the routine business of the church. But from the BBC's point of view, they're thinking of Tommy Robinson supporters come along. Well, that's a real dilemma for the church because they're really bad people. So the church, whatever can it do with bad people who want to come on? But then if you've got a church, if say a BBC journalist who wrote that went along to church, he or she would probably feel he was like honoring the church by gracing them with their presence. So it's a very, very one-sided thing. The bloke in the picture there is giving out chocolates. I think in the report it explained he'd been to some sort of immigration protest, and he went giving out chocolates on both sides, chatting to people on both sides. There was a Sky report as well, along the lines of far right Christians, far right activists becoming Christians. And as Phil was saying, I think if people are heading to church, great. Let's hope they go to churches where they're going to hear the real thing, and they're not going to be pushed away, or they're not going to join. And then the mission of the church, the mission the church feels that its mission is to knock out any sort of conservative values from them and turn them into like a Lib Dem, because they think that's what a nice Christian should be. But it's, the fact that it's been reported quite extensively in mainstream media shows that this is a very significant effect, I think.
But no church itself would declare this as a dilemma, right? Like it was.
I feel it's a dilemma in that not much good can come of it. In terms of having people that have come into church, sort of maybe seeking some truth in Christianity, and to turn up in a church that isn't preaching the truth, but is preaching nonsense. That no good thing is going to come out of having these two groups together, really.
The group I'm more worried about. Okay, I agree that's just a disaster in the making.
Yeah.
My worry is that they go to a church where there is orthodox teaching. They're not getting some sort of crazy heresy. It is orthodox teaching, but the culture and philosophy of the church is very much against. It's sort of a bit progressive, left-wingy. So it's not so much
think
that
something okay might come of that.
Yeah.
I can see positive things coming out of that there are people that basically hold to the authority of the Bible and speaking out of these things. They're preaching the Bible, and these people are coming along to studies, and they're saying, "But what about this?" The Bible
hopefully it'll change churches.
Yeah.
I've got hope they might change some churches.
I think something good could come out of that. I think not much good will come where people have abandoned the people who are preaching have abandoned the Bible, or are just teaching completely counter to the spirit of it.
They'll just make people like this so unwelcome, though. They'll soon be off. I'll just show you a little video. This will warm your heart to see the way a revival is coming. This man here holding his wooden cross is a sincere expression of Christian faith. But if you don't want to watch this, some people might find this offensive. But anyway, if we could just watch this. This is in Perth. This gentleman here at a protest. So as Phil was saying, I'm not sure he's quite got the full message there. I think that little video clip is quite a good illustration of part of what's going on. Part of it.
Yeah. Are you sure somebody didn't say, "Here, could you hold this for me?" at the time?
I can imagine that'd be the real thing. Right, moving on. This is John Swinney. They've had their cabinet meeting with the Children's Parliament. Every year, the Scottish Cabinet meets with a bunch of school children from the Children's Parliament, and they have a cabinet meeting together so the children can have input to the governing of the nation. Now, the resolution on that picture is dreadful. But looking at the children, what's anything you notice about them?
Is there an agenda thing going on there?
The vast majority of girls. They always are. Anything you see going on in schools with the government, it's almost all girls. Probably because the girls want to volunteer for this sort of thing, but also they probably want to have more girls as well. Now, I've got some little video clip of it. So here we go.
I'm Ellie, I'm the chair of the Scottish Youth Parliament. I'm here today with the First Minister and Cara from the Children's Parliament. We have just been at the annual Cabinet Takeover event, and we're going to ask you a couple of questions. I'll pass to Cara first.
Hello, I'm Cara from the Children's Parliament, and my first question is, this is your second Cabinet meeting with children and young people. As a First Minister, what have you gained listening to us?
I think the key thing for me is that I hear the voice of children and young people directly about issues that matter to you. So we've had a number of discussions today, and crucially we can hear exactly the questions that are on your mind, and that helps to influence my choices and priorities as First Minister. It helps the Cabinet to hear those issues, and it helps us to respond to the aspirations of children and young people in Scotland.
Just before we go on, the thoughts coming to me here. It would be the easiest thing in the world to make an AI John Swinney, wouldn't it? I mean, this would not be a marvel of technology. Yeah. You just feed it. It would just have to scrape. That's the word, isn't it? All the Scottish government policy documents, put it into ChatGPT, and that would be a John Swinney. Anyway, so do you want to let's play a little game, actually. Guess what issues are at the top of the agenda of Scotland's children?
Listening to children.
School uniforms. School uniforms all gone already, or?
No, that could have been one.
4-day week.
No. You're underestimating the degree of indoctrination that takes place with this thing. Correct.
Oh, transgender, multi-toilets.
Climate change, correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
climate change. I'll give you a clue for another one. We've already talked about it in this evening.
Violence against women?
Violence against women and girls, yeah. Top priority among the are they primary school children? I think they probably are primary school. Among the children of Scotland. violence against women and girls. Yeah. So let's carry on.
And then the first question for me is, what's one thing that you'll remember from today in 10 years' time?
I think one of the things that I will remember from today is the deep concern that children and young people have shared with me about gender-based violence in our society. And it's a societal problem. It's a big issue in Scotland today. The Cabinet at our meeting earlier on this morning were discussing this very issue.
That's an amazing coincidence, isn't it? They were talking about it only this morning, and then the children raised exactly the same issue with them, and that's spooky, isn't it? I mean, what do these children mean by gender-based violence? I mean, does that girl mean if she came and said a boy in my class punched me? I think, oh, okay, that sounds genuine. Yeah, that sounds a real thing. But obviously, the kids are just fed the lines by the adults.
And then we came to the takeover discussion, and children and young people have raised that issue with us. So we have to sort this as a country, and that means that it's got to be a priority for me today and every day. And
that's funny. It's a priority for the Lord Advocate as well. The children, the government, the Lord Advocate. It's like they're all part of the same firm, isn't it?
And in 10 years' time, I want Scotland to be in a better place than it is today.
Thanks.
At the end of our 2-year cycle, we want to make sure action keeps happening on the issues brought. What is something you are going to take action on to make sure our issues remain priority?
Well, one of the themes that you raised with us today was about climate action, and that has got to be part of the agenda of the Scottish Government to make sure that we're giving the leadership so that we can save our planet. It's our very precious planet. We live in a lovely natural environment, but we've got to care for that and nurture that. And past generations have used up our resources. They've created the difficulties of climate change that we now face, and we've got to address that. We've got to fix it, and that's one of the issues that the Cabinet will take away. It's one of the key priorities of the government. My government's focused on ending child poverty, about growing the economy, improving our public services, and taking climate action. So it'll be right at the heart of the government's agenda.
And final question for me is, how can we work together to make progress on our shared goals after the Cabinet meeting?
Well, the key thing for me is that we can't just view this as a sort of one morning discussion. And I suppose the reassuring thing about a lot of what we've talked about today is that there are ongoing discussions that take.
I'm feeling I shouldn't subject you to any more of that.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's more than enough of a dose. You see, it gets in there like it's blaming previous generations. I don't like that message to kids. Hey, kids, you're the pure and good ones. All those older people, whoa, dear me, they're bad. If only they'd listen to you kids, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now. And the reason I share that mainly, it's a bit of an insight into Scottish education. It's like the tip of the iceberg for what goes on in Scottish schools. Children just being pushed into these. I
think the term gender-based violence is quite interesting as to sort of how are you proving that violence is based on gender? You know, what's the criteria there?
Yeah,
well, it just means who does it and who's the victim, assuming it's the right we're on. So I guess if a girl or a woman is violent towards a man, I don't think that's counted as gender-based violence. I think it's only when it's a man as the perpetrator.
Okay, and what about the hate speech and the whole racial issues? So if the person's of a different race, you can say it wasn't because it was a woman; it was because she was. You know, it was a racial issue. Is that not as bad?
It could be just someone was really annoying, or someone said something that really wound someone up. But I wonder what the kids feel about this when the kids go home at the end of the day. But if you're a kid in that situation, you're going to ask some questions of the First Minister. You're thinking, I don't want to screw this up. I want to get this exactly right. And so if you've got someone saying, oh, shall I help you work out what questions to ask? You think, oh, yeah, please, just tell me what to say, will you? I don't want to look an idiot when it's going to be on telly. And that's the way it functions. In a way, not in its usual meaning, but I think it's a form of abusing children. It's misusing children to promote an adult agenda.
Yeah.
And they say the Scottish government does it absolutely shamelessly.
Do you know what happens? These things go on, like, I think it's called news round. So it's around in schools as well. And then, of course, they go, oh, look. There is a guy who's listening to you, not telling you what to say, listening to you. I guarantee you, if you go to kids and say, what's your biggest concern? And for me, it's not gender-based violence. It's violence anyway. Any violence at school, like the disruption, somebody kicking off in a class. You know what I mean? Like I keep on asking, do you feel safe at school? And the answer is mostly. Sometimes not. Sometimes I do. You know, there's a bit of an edge. Yeah. And it should never be, because you never know who's going to kick off, and the teachers can do nothing. That is, for me, that's a big issue. The biggest issue kids actually have is teachers can do nothing.
But wouldn't it be fascinating to watch the whole of this process that goes through this consultation and leads to the children raising these issues? It'd be fascinating to see it in action, because you see that, I mean, they're being steered all the way, totally controlled, totally managed.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the kids realize that they're just being basically used as a mouthpiece for the government's priorities. I don't know. If they don't realize it now, they'll realize it later in life. And I would imagine they might be quite unhappy about it. Okay, let's press on. International Men's Day. I think that's been and gone, hasn't it?
Yeah.
This is an article, I think it was STV. How do we get more males into caring jobs? I think the answer is, who cares? Anyone who wants to go into it can go into it. And I don't care what the gender balance is, just let everyone choose what they want to do, and that's absolutely fine. But for International Men's Day, the only thing they can think of is trying to get more men to do things that are more normally associated with women.
Feminine, yeah. How can we get
International Women's Day? Sorry?
International Men's Day. How can we get men to be more feminine? Tick.
Yeah. And then International Women's Day is all about how to get women to do more of the things that are more typically associated with men. Yeah. Anyway, let's miss that one for now. Right, let's a quick look at this. There's been a bit of publicity about the Engender taxpayer-funded feminist group. They've had £1.3 million in the last, I think it's over the course of this government, and they've been part of this expert advisory group on abortion, recommending all sorts of terrible things. And I think it's appalling that basically you've got these hardline feminist pro-abortion activists who get a job with the government, and the government pays them to tell them what they want to hear and what these activists want to tell them. Totally different world than we live in. But their office is tucked away in the back streets near the Scottish Parliament. I was wondering if it might be time for a visit there in some capacity. I might go along and make a video outside their door soon. But they are seriously bad news. So part of what they've been under pressure for is this saying that same-sex, I can't always do this, sex-selective abortion should be legal in Scotland. So the Conservatives weigh in on this, and they say taxpayers will not be happy to learn that their money is being used to push extreme policies. This is yet another example of the SNP government using taxpayer cash to bankroll groups to push an extreme ideological agenda. Common sense says we need to stop funding charities to push extreme politics, etc., etc. And I just thought, classic Conservatives there. What's the real issue? The real issue is the scale of abortion now. Another issue after them is the fact that these recommendations would make the situation, to be honest, a little bit worse. It can't get much worse, a little bit worse. And what do the Conservatives focus on? The funding of a group.
Waste of money, yeah.
Yeah, it's waste of money. Yeah. That's just classic Conservatives. They'll just go with whatever they think is the sort of the low-hanging fruit. They won't get to the heart of the matter. They'll just pick up on a fringe issue. Right, it's a bit late actually. There's only 5 minutes to go. I'll put that one a bit late. This is an issue to watch. We're going to make a video on this in the next couple of days. It's moving towards children in Scotland having the right to opt out of RE lessons, as well as religious observance in schools. I haven't looked into it fully, but the Scottish humanists have been pushing this like crazy, and they're saying it's a matter of children's rights, which is the new religion. So the old religion, Christianity, is being pushed out to make way for the new religion, or in the name of the new religion, which is human rights and children's rights. So I'll have a look at that over the next few days. Right, hello. I've got a reply about sex-selective abortion from Sandesh Gulhani. He thinks it's appalling, the sex-selective bit, not the abortion bit, I believe. Yeah, absolutely. It's really, it's bizarre, isn't it? That is a very widespread view. Right, just got a few minutes. Let's just see, we've got something else. That's John Swinney meeting with a group of Jews and Muslims. Is that right? Yeah, Jewish and Muslim leaders. I mean, why did he need to bring together Jewish and Muslim leaders? Because obviously realizes, how should we put it, that there's a lot of ill feeling towards Jews from a significant number of Muslims. But I thought, John, it doesn't work though. If you have a bloke on the stage at your conference who refused to condemn the October the 7th attacks, and you give him a big hug and a round of applause, then you can invite as many Jews and Muslims as you like into Butte House. It doesn't work. You've given the game away. And you know, I keep saying this, but I keep presenting more evidence. The Herald is becoming more and more off-center in this coverage. Not really any pretense of being neutral in any way. And their social media is unbelievable. This one, what has For Women Scotland's campaign? So I can't read it because I've got arrows over it. What has For Women Scotland's campaign achieved to better lives in Scotland? This is like the gender critical feminist group. So they've got their headline there. What good have they done for anyone? Next one. An independent Scotland can prevent fascism gaining a powerful voice. Across public life, animosity towards trans people is becoming more overt. I mean, it's becoming like the Green Party newspaper. Do you read any newspapers particularly? Do you follow any of them? Or where do you get your news from?
Just online.
Where though? Where online?
So probably YouTube's what I listen to mostly. You know, so sometimes Spectator, other things, you know, online, and probably a lot of BBC as well, just to see what's happening in the world. Don't trust their skew on things, but it you know, puts some things on my radar.
Yeah.
I do actually go and read them all, like in terms of I'll pick up the headlines, find something. You know, I don't stick to one in particular, but I do. You can definitely see consistent oppositions. You can see who's pro one and the other, and it's quite. Yeah, I think media is so hard to actually get a a just report. You know, something that's actually presenting an unbiased view. It's impossible, it seems, these days. Everything's so gravitated to an extreme one view or an extreme another. I think it's very difficult.
As well. I think the news is increasingly dominated by opinion.
Yeah.
I find if you look at the front page, even if something like, you know, the war in Ukraine, say, I would quite like to just hear a report of what's happening. But generally, you'll get an opinion piece. Then the headline, it's always got to be something like the one thing that's could lead to defeat for Putin, or the one thing that could turn this. It's always got to be like some sensationalist headline. It's like YouTube thumbnail, so clickbaity YouTube thumbnail. But those sort of headlines are becoming more and more normal in even like, you know, broadsheet newspapers, as they're called, online. So I think there's more and more opinion and less just straightforward, letting you know what's going on in the world. That's interesting. I look at the Scottish Daily Express every morning as well. Sometimes they have some different stories. But that is just really anti-SNP propaganda from beginning to end. Every story is framed as SNP humiliated by, SNP found, failed in this area. I mean, it's just, I find it just really tedious to be reading it. But some people obviously like it. But then the Herald's going totally the other way.
I think there's been some good reports from GB News that I've watched.
Right.
So I saw one of going to the United States and looking at the anti-fascist.
I saw a bit of that. Yeah,
I thought that was well put together, and it really chimed with some things I see in Edinburgh, I see in Scotland, and it's sort of like, yeah, that seems the trajectory that we're on, and that was just really, them framing everything as being fascist and then saying you've got a right to kill fascists. Not that there's a huge amount of shooting and things going on and things like that, but really in terms of language and rhetoric, that's where the graffiti is kill the police, kill the fascists, all these kind of things. And I think the rhetoric comes before those things happening, Yeah,
I agree. I think there is a hardening of attitudes and language, and sooner or later that will translate into action. Just about graffiti, just to finish, where the pro-life vigil was in Edinburgh, just outside the buffer zone, there's a metal door behind it. It was just painted plain black, totally flat, painted plain black. And it became a bit of a sort of graffiti battle going on it. Someone would come along and daub some sort of pro-abortion slogans over it. And then someone else would come along and try and cross them out and put pro-life things on. Who the pro-life graffitiist is, I really cannot imagine. But there seems like there's one somewhere. Anyway, but this battle is still going on. Like weeks later, the door keeps getting painted over, and still someone comes along and puts more things on it. It's very strange, very strange. Anyway, thank you very much for your comments, everyone. See you next week. I'm sure we'll have a guest on next week as well. But thanks, Phil. Thanks, Gareth. Phil and Gareth, if you could hang on for a minute, just have a quick word after, that would be great. And everyone, see you next week. Good night.